What if your greatest impact wasn't in how much you do, but in how deeply you loved? Today's guest is proof that you don't need a title or a big following to be a world changer. You just need to have a heart willing to show up. In this episode, I sit down with Nicole Bond, one half of the real estate duo, a wife, a mother, a business owner, and a passionate Jesus follower whose life is built on love in action. From walking away from surface level friendships to building a real estate business rooted in community, Nicole shares how obedience, purpose, and faith led her family to a life they never could have planned, but always prayed for. Get ready for a story of resilience, risk, and radical love that just might stir something deep in your soul. Now, today, you and your husband run a real estate. Do you own the brokerage that you work at, or are you part of a team?
No, so we are under an umbrella of a brokerage called the Experience Northwest, but we are our own team under there, so we act independently. We don't have a whole bunch of support from them. It's mostly just an umbrella to hang our license, and then we act as our own bosses.
Which is the best, right?
Yes. Very helpful. We don't have to ask permission for anything.
Yeah. Once you go that route, it's very difficult to ever consider going back to having a boss. I want to go back, though, in time. So I don't know your full story. When you were growing up, was there something, and you're not just a realtor. This is something that I'm really excited about, your story, because where your heart's at is something that I really admire and I'm excited to share. But going back, growing up, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Western Washington in the Bothell area.
And what did you see yourself doing maybe in high school?
I think I was always one of those kids who didn't quite know where I fit. I just, like everybody, I was going through high school and everybody always felt like they knew exactly what they were going to do and where they were going to go to college and like they had it all together. And I just wasn't one of those kids, which is really daunting when you're like 16 to 18 years old and everyone around you knows what they're doing. And you're kind of like, well, am I behind? Like, I don't understand what my purpose is, what my plan is. Why, like where I'm supposed to be going. I just know that I'm a hard worker. That's kind of all I knew at that point.
Well, what kind of jobs did you do?
My first job was at the mall at Aeropostale, and I worked in the back and worked my way up there. And then when I met my husband, I was still doing that. And then I actually shifted into a leasing specialist, which is funny because it ties into real estate now. But and I had no idea. I just thought that was like a temporary thing. And I ended up being pretty good at that. So I moved up pretty far and I was a property manager for 500 units within a couple years from there, and then became a stay-at-home mom.
And so let's talk a little bit about where things were at before you moved to. Do you live in Coeur d'Alene?
No, I live in Spokane Valley.
Okay.
It's from the border.
What were you doing before you guys moved?
Before we moved, I was a stay-at-home mom solely. I had quit. Well, I went on maternity leave, and I was with the intention of going back and really excited for that. And then I had my daughter, and I was like, oh, there's no way I'm leaving her. I can't. I love her. I just want to be with her all the time. So we put in our notice, and actually we had to move because my job tied into where we lived at the time. So it was kind of a little free-for-all all in one time.
Oh my goodness. But you were involved in the church.
Yeah, when we were on the west side, I had been going to the same church my whole entire life almost. Got baptized there. But toward the end, when we were living there, I just felt like we were really complacent. Like we were going to church and, talking the talk, but not necessarily walking the walk, if you will. Mm-hmm. So it was just being monotone and complacent through that.
And what was your husband doing then at that time?
He worked for a company called Tradesman International. They did supplied manpower to construction companies. And so he'd drive around and find job sites where they needed contractors to come and help them. And then he'd basically rent them out to work for a little bit and then bring him back and find a new job for him.
And was he happy doing that? Or was he also.
I don't think he ever felt fulfilled in that. Like the money was good. And, when we were on the west side, like it was really, we were just so surface level. We would go to church, he'd go to work, but he'd work all day long. And like some days he would never see our daughter because he would be gone before she'd wake up and come home after she'd go to bed already. And then we just have what I would call surface level friends, like they're the ones that when they need you, it's, oh, I need you. But when you need them, it's not so much. We're reciprocated, I guess. But it just felt really complete. We thought we were happy. I look back and I'm like, oh, that was really unfulfilling.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think this is how life's supposed to be, but it's not. It can be so much better. When you guys decided to move, were you already a realtor?
No, so it was kind of a weird turn of events, I would say. We were in the process of getting licensed, so we were taking our classes really slowly, not in any hurry because we just really didn't know what we were doing. But my husband had seen an ad for this real estate team in the area that we were living in, and we met with him, and he's like, oh, you know what? You guys are exactly our people. We'd love to have you on. And so that kind of like started that journey. And then before we moved, we had no plans on moving anywhere. We were living there. It was great. Life was fine. But we just kept getting these like weird nudges, like, hey, your worship pastor is building a church and planting it in Spokane, which we'd literally never been here before. Never even talked about Spokane. And then from there, Robert's job, like out of nowhere, was like, hey, do you want to plant an office in the Spokane area? Like, we need somebody to help build that office up. Is that something you'd consider? And we just it was like small things throughout. And that was kind of the final straw where we're like, well, okay, let's go and pretend we live there for a weekend because we'd literally never been here ever and just see how it feels. And so we came over. We had only had our daughter at that point, and we all came over, visited, looked at a couple houses just kind of casually and fell in love with it. I mean, we instantly felt like this is where God was telling us to be. And so we were like, okay, let's just make it work. We drove home, set up a time to have the realtor that we were going to work for list our house. And within a week, we had our house listed and then had been under contract on a house here, sight unseen.
Oh my gosh. Was that overwhelming as a young mom?
Yes. And so you remember, like, we were surface level on everything. So I wouldn't say we were the most obedient Christians I've ever met, So for us to be obedient and being like, oh, God's telling us to go and just uplift our whole entire life, that was not like who we were back then. So the fact that we even listened is interesting. And then we were like, oh, okay, sure, let's just throw it all at one time. And just, what I cling to always is nothing is permanent. So if I'm hearing something wrong and I'm not doing what I'm necessarily supposed to do, I'm not going to fail. Like, I'm not going to lose focus on what I'm supposed to be doing. It's not permanent. So if me moving to Spokane wasn't what I was supposed to be doing and I was hearing wrong, I can always move back.
I love that. I've been telling my son that in some of the decisions that he's made lately is that nothing is permanent. You can always make different decisions once you get more information and see how things feel. So when you were moving here at that time, did you both want to become a team as in real estate, or were you thinking you were going to still be a stay-at-home mom?
No, the plan was we'd move over here. This was our like very 5-minute plan thing that we made. But our plan was, okay, we're going to move over. Robert will continue to do his job over here because that's a steady paycheck. Like, we know we're getting that money, right? And then I will help build our real estate business. And then once that is off the ground, then Robert will shift over and quit his job. The kind of pain point there is when we moved over here, we were promised a certain pay at the job that was transferring him over. And when we got here, within the first 2 months, we quickly realized that we were not even moving our mortgage. That they had promised this number and then it was not that. And we made, I think it was $1,100 a month for
What?
from July of 2019 until December of 2019. We were making $1,100 a month and easily spending way more than that every month.
And so how did you get through that time period? What did you focus on?
I think honestly it was that we moved over here because God's calling was for us to be here. So we needed to stick it out. We needed to figure out what our plan was and what his purpose was for us here, because we didn't know why we were here. We just knew we were supposed to be here, but the why didn't come till later. And so we were kind of just like grinding gears. I actually didn't get licensed until October 2019. So we had been like busting butt and losing money for that first summer. I finally got licensed, and then Robert just came home absolutely miserable every single day. And by December, I was over it. I was like, Robert, we didn't move here for you to hate this. Like, that was not the intention. I was also pregnant. I found out we were pregnant with our son, like the same month we moved here.
Wow.
So all of the changes, but I was so tired of seeing him angry every day. So in December, I just said, we were at the dinner table and I said, Robert, I can't be around you. You are so miserable. And it is triggering for all of us. Like, it puts our daughter in a bad mood. It puts me in a bad mood. Our marriage is like not rocky, but it wasn't great. Like, we were fighting because he was mad. And I just said, I need you to walk into your office tomorrow and I need you to quit your job. I know that sounds crazy.
Did you feel like God told you to say that? Or were you just, yeah.
Yeah, I just felt like there was so much more, and him having that job was going to delay us more. And we, $1,100 was not worth him hating every single day. So and he did. And the fact that he listened to me was also a God thing, because I just don't think that's not in his wheelhouse to be like, oh yeah, Nicole, let's be crazy and just quit my job. So he did. He went in the next day and he said, this isn't working out. I'm going to quit my job. And then we started real estate full time January of 2020.
Was he licensed when he quit, or did he have to bust that out?
Yeah, we both were licensed in October. So but
now, I know your heart when you moved here wasn't to build this real estate empire. Where was your heart in what you wanted to create in a life here?
Yeah, I think at the beginning I didn't necessarily know. I just knew my purpose was here because of God. I just didn't know what that looked like. And then the evolution of creating our business, I think, happened at the exact perfect time. Because when we started real estate in January of 2020, our plan was, we're just going to build connections with as many local businesses and help their business grow. In turn, that'll come back eventually. Like, I'm not in this for, I need quick leads right now. I need to build relationships because I have zero here. And so we built a plan, I guess, of us just walking into people's businesses every day and saying, how can I help you? What are your goals to create your business to grow, your personal life to grow? How can I help you? And a lot of people were skeptical. Like, some people would be like, what is in this for you? Like, I don't know why you're here. And my response was always, I don't need anything from you. I'm not asking you to buy a house. I'm not asking to sell your house. I'm strictly asking how I can help you. And it honestly created some of the most beautiful relationships I've ever had. And like I said, over there on the west side, we had really surface level relationships. And so when I was here, I'd never felt so loved in my whole entire life. And I'm sure that helps because I was willing to love on them. But yeah.
It's funny what we need to learn to give away what we want the most. And it comes back if you're able to give it away. But how much of that was also feeling a calling when you talk about what you know what your purpose is, how would you just define what your purpose is now?
Now I think it's to be a connector of people. I think we didn't know we were good at that, and we do community events once a month to help people get to know people that you'd never meet in normal life. We connect local businesses with other local businesses that can help and things like that. And I think we just realized part of the way through that we were really good at, like, I guess, just like projecting people onto each other and allowing them to form a better bond than what you would if you were just to meet somebody on the street.
Mm-hmm. So what a beautiful plan that you had. But where do you feel that the root of that plan came from? The church or books that you were reading or just the way that you wanted to live your life?
I think I've always been a really sentimental person, just in general. Like, I take a lot of things. I'm very empathetic, and Robert is that way as well. And so I think when we grew into this, we went. I guess let me back up. We had joined a brokerage at the time, and when we got here, we were like, well, how do we get leads? Like, what do we do? And everybody we talked to said, you just need to call the people you know.
I know nothing about anybody here.
Great. I'll call all the people who are not moving on the west side. That's wonderful. And I remember literally crying every day, walking into the office going, I don't know where I'm going to get clients from, because we started in January of 2020, and then we didn't close a house until June of 2020. So already from the whole last year, we were losing money from Robert's job previous. And then we started this new job and had no money coming in at all. It was really stressful. And then I had my son in March when COVID hit. And so it was like one thing after another. And I just remember crying. And my daughter still remembers this because I was literally on the floor on my hands and knees, like ugly crying, going, God, you brought me here. And I'm pretty upset. Like, I was pissed. And I said, God, I don't know what you want from me anymore. I'm here. I'm doing the work. I'm trying my best. I don't know where I'm supposed to be. And my daughter, she still laughs because she's like, Mom, you looked nuts. And I was like, well, it's
How old was she?
yeah. And then, what's funny is right after that, not even 2 weeks later, we had closed two houses. Well, not closed. We went under contract on two houses for the very first time. And I was like, okay, God, I see you. You're here and you heard me and you knew I needed you to throw the dog a bone a little bit because I was losing it. And I think our whole plan really went around us just saying, okay, we're going to be obedient to what we truly know is God's plan for us. And our plan, and he was lining things up. I mean, every time I would follow, it was like the next door would open up and the next door would open up. And so there by no means was it easy the whole way through. I mean, you quit your job and start real estate and you think, oh, this client list is going to fall from the sky. And it didn't. And then COVID happened and we couldn't
Had a baby.
yeah. And we couldn't meet anybody. We weren't allowed to at that point, right? And so we still don't know anybody other than the people we met for the last 3 months. But everybody knows an agent. They all know realtors. So it's like, well, what's going to make me stand out is my heart, right? And so I think going into that, we knew we had to be different in that way. And no matter what we did, it had to be with a whole heart of loving somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Actually selfless, not going into it looking for something to get in return right away.
Yeah.
How much of that was rooted though in how we as Christians are meant to be in community?
I think a lot of that goes into there. I mean, I've met a lot of my really dear friends growing up had problems in the church, where they never felt like they had a place, and they always felt like they weren't getting loved on enough, or like they would be forgotten. in the church or something along those lines. And there was always a negative impact. And so I really wanted, in my heart, I know that like as a Christian, we need to be full loving, right? And I'm going to love everybody I can because that's God's will for me. Like he's going to do his part and you know, you're going to speak to him later, but for me, he wants me to love you because that's how you're going to get to know him. That's my journey, is to allow more people to know that if you're a Christian, you're going to love people and that's going to bring us all together, right? Like, so I think just going into it, knowing that that's my heart and my purpose is to connect to people, but also connect to God.
And something you shared with me previous to this was that you wanted to be, I just loved this. And you might not even remember telling me this, but you told me that you wanted to be that safe place for people to come when they needed somebody.
Yeah. So we started a thing called Monday Night Dinner. This was before we knew almost anybody. And this was at the very beginning. And Monday Night Dinner was anybody and everybody was allowed to come to our house. Doors were unlocked. And have dinner on Monday. Usually it was potluck style, so you brought a side and I'd have the main dish. And it allowed people to come there frequently, to come into our home and feel comfortable already. So that way, on a later date, when life isn't easy, because it never is, and you have a hardship, your marriage is failing, you're sick, you have a family member who's in turmoil, something that's happening in your life, you can come to our home and already have that safe place. You're not feeling nervous to come into my home and ask, hey, I need your help in something. You've already been here and you know that we're here and our door's always open.
And how many of those relationships that you built when you first started that have become like family?
Oh, it's the best thing. I like cry about it. Like, we have people who come over still weekly that have always come for the last several years. And they are like family. Like we'll go on camping trips and do everything. And the kids are all just running around. And on every given Monday, I have like 20 kids in my house. So it's a little nuts here, but they've just been like some of the best relationships I've had. And I had people come because they've felt like they could, you know, they knew that my door is literally always unlocked and they can come over whether it's 10 p.m., 3 a.m., and they can sit on the couch and we can just chat and the kids can play.
And how different does it feel the way you're living your life now here in the Spokane area versus the Bothell life that you lived?
Oh, man. It feels like two different worlds, if I'm being perfectly honest. And we talk about this a lot when Robert and I have like date nights. It just genuinely feels like we were living almost like a story, I guess, on the west side. Like that was what we did, what we were supposed to do every day, and we invited people over and we, you know, whatever it was. But I wouldn't say we just were so complacent, and I wasn't showing my kids what it looked like to love people or to be loved back, right? Because that we want to show both. And now that we're here, it feels like it's polar opposites. And I'm grateful every single day because we get to show our kids to love on people. We get to show our kids how to be loved by other people and how to create those boundaries. I learned a hard way throughout this journey is that you also deserve boundaries. And then also like how to love God more, right? Because we were so talk the talk, not walk the walk on the west side, that now I get to walk the walk and talk the talk. And my kids actively get to see that every day, which is just the coolest thing to see.
And when you think about the difference, obviously, I don't believe that you have to move or change careers to change that. But what was it that sparked that we've got to do things differently in our lives, not just what we're doing for work, but in the way we're living?
Yeah, I don't think you need to uproot your whole entire life to feel God's
Have a baby during COVID and lose your job and all those things.
No, it's totally on theme for us, though. I feel like we've always done things where something big happens, but it doesn't have to be that way because since we've moved here, and since that whole first year, there hasn't been big, giant changes, but there's been a lot of little changes in our lives. And I think that's a testimony to like, we're always a work in progress. And if you're willing to do small changes to allow yourself to open up, you don't have to. I mean, we should read the Bible every day, but you don't have to be a Christian. Like, you don't have to go to church every Sunday. You can literally get up and just choose, hey, today I'm going to go out and find one thing that I can do to make somebody's day. Or I can go and instead of complain about something, I'm tired. I'm going to complain about being tired or how much work I have to do or all these things. Instead of complaining, I'm going to be grateful that people are calling my phone and that I got sleep, but maybe I have two kids that woke me up early because I'm grateful I got two kids that wake me up early. Not everybody gets that. So, I think it's a mind shift, and a lot of prayer that goes into it. But
was there a breaking point though that prior to, I think we go through the motions as long as the pain of staying the same has to become worse than the pain of changing. So was there a breaking point for you guys?
I think so. Right before we decided and we felt like God's calling, that was in June, July time. In April that year, we had also lost a baby. Really new. It was a very new miscarriage, and I had who I thought was my absolute best friend in the world. Like, she was supposed to be my person. I was always there for her. And there was never, I have such a drama-free life because I lived that way on purpose and I've always been that way. But I needed her in that time. And I was like, hey, I know it's inconvenient, but will you come over and sit with me? Let's just have dinner. Like, I'm just not sure how I feel. And she said, no, I have a headache. And I was like, what? With a headache? Okay. And I'm like, I'm not asking you to run a marathon. I'm just asking you to sit on my couch. Your headache will be there on your couch for mine, but I needed you for me in this time. And I think that was like the beginning of where I realized that the relationships I had, the things I was doing weren't making an impact enough for me to be important enough for somebody. And I don't need to be important. Like, I don't need to be your number one priority by any means, but I need to be a priority sometimes. And so I think that was like the ticking part where I was like, where am I living and is this fulfilling?
And the reason that you're so passionate about being the place that people can come to is because you know what it's like when you feel like you have nowhere to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things. Like, I mean, there's a lot of traumas, and everybody has trauma that they're going through or have gone through or are still processing because we're always evolving. But I want people to know, like, I'm going to meet you wherever you're at. So even if it isn't my door, I want you to know that you feel comfortable with me at any point.
Mm-hmm. And did you start living that way before you moved, or was that all happening?
I think I've always been that way. Like, I've always just been the person where people knew that they could go to me if they needed it. But I never demanded it back for myself ever. I never took back that and said, you know what, these are the wrong people to be around. And I also never hung out with the people I wanted to be like. My dad used to always tell me, you are who you hang out with. And I always rolled my eyes at him. And I was always like, Dad, you're wrong. These people are great. They're not great. And I would always hang out with people who would make poor life choices. They'd hang around with the wrong people. They would, I mean, not that you can't drink from time to time, but they would be drinking a lot of the time, and I was hanging around with all these people that didn't actively pursue God, which is what I needed to be around this whole time. And I think in that moment when I needed somebody, I think it just, everything that I'd ever felt pain from or being like abandoned from or something like that just came at the same time. And I was like, you know what? These are not going to be around. These are not my people. Robert was always I need a quantity of people around me, not a quality. And he would be devastated if a friend didn't want to be like, wasn't a good friend to him. And I just had to quickly remind him, like, are these the people we really want to be around? Are these the people we want to be like? Because I'm not seeing that anymore.
I think something else to consider as we're raising kids that are growing up, are these the people that we want to have having influence on our kids?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And also, did you have to learn that you have to ask for support to receive it? Or did you ever feel like you were blocking that?
I think that's a good question. I don't think I ever was blocking it. I don't think I was ever forthcoming about when I was struggling growing up or any time in my life. I think I always sheltered that because I always felt like I was somebody's burden. Like it wasn't enough. I haven't done enough for you to receive anything back. So I don't want to give you my burdens because you already got your own. And so I always would like ignore the fact or deal with it on my own because I just wasn't feeling like they needed to be there for me. And then the time I did ask for help, I didn't get it. And so I was like, maybe this isn't the right way.
Now, going back further, when was there a time where you were made to believe that you were the burden?
I think a lot of it goes back to my mom. We were really, really, really close. And she was like my best friend. She was not a good motherly figure, but she was my best friend. Which I think it goes into a lot of my parenting now. Like, I'm your mother first and your friend second, and I will be your mother, and you won't always like me, but I will 100% make sure you're safe, loved, and cared for. And with my mom, it was what looked good to people on the outside that she would do. And then right before my freshman year of high school, my mom went and visited somebody she had met on the internet. A lady, not like a romantic thing. And I went and stayed with my dad for the time being. And then she came home and picked me up and said, "Okay, we're moving next week." And I was like, "I'm sorry, I'm not moving anywhere. I'm about to start high school. Like a lot happening. This is when you're in high school and middle school, that feels detrimental, to leave everything you've ever known." And she made me go. So I did. I uprooted my life, and she was so mad that I wasn't excited for this. And there was a lot of pain that came from that. And I tried my best to be the person to say, "Mom, I do not want to go. Can we please stay?" And we went anyway. And then I was in a not safe place. Like we moved there, we moved in with these people we didn't know. And as a 16-year-old girl, or I think I was 13 actually, I just felt so unsafe. I would go on walks to get out of the house. I would do whatever I could to not be there, and I wasn't heard. And so my mom was really mad that I didn't want to be there, and she felt betrayed by me. When in the reality of it, and this took a lot of time for me to understand that it wasn't me, but in the reality of it, she was supposed to be there for me. And that's where, like, I think my selflessness comes from because I felt like she was so selfish in that moment. And then I had my saving grace, my dad is the best person. And I called him and I said, "Dad, I can't be here. I'm so miserable. I need you to come get me." And that very same day, he bought a plane ticket, got on the plane, came, grabbed me, and got right back. And I mean, it was a long day for him, and we joke about it. I actually wrote my senior paper on him for high school that he was my Finding Nemo dad because he went all the way across the country just to get me. And so there's a saving grace in that, but I think there was a lot of things I learned.
You learned that you weren't able to ask for what you needed in the world. And even if you did ask, it would be denied or rejected. So why even bother asking?
So there's been a lot of growth in that in the last several years. But I think that time for my friend right before we moved here was like my last straw. I had asked all the other people who should love me, and Robert's the only person who's my husband who has been the person who's been constant, where they've always respected my boundaries. They've always respected what I needed and been there when I asked for something. And so he's been my rock the whole entire time. But when I sought for it elsewhere, other than God, I was not receiving it back. And so it just was one of those things. And I think that was just my last straw where I was like, I need to change something.
Mm-hmm. But you also, I never have gotten in chatting with you and in this conversation, I've never gotten the impression that you have felt that you couldn't still go to God.
No. And I think I got baptized when I was 18 at the church because I went through some other like boyfriend hard times where that feels detrimental when you're 18. Looking back, it's shaped me a lot of ways, but I went through quite a bit of things and I said, you know what, I'm going to take a year where I don't try and date somebody. I don't try and look for somebody else's approval because I think that's what I was seeking in my adolescent years because of all of those things with my mom. And so I said, I'm just going to focus on God because I was not being obedient previous to that as a teenager. You really always struggle. I think a lot of them do. And so I made a promise that I was going to actively pursue God and I wasn't going to pursue anybody else except for myself and God. And I got baptized. And I think that was the start of where my journey was getting better. Like I was actively going to him rather than seeking somebody else to love me, because I think a lot of my adolescent years were me trying to find somebody who's going to be there when I need them.
Mm-hmm. Now, that faith had to be what helped you, carried you through being able to come here and trust that other people would not let you down if the next time came that you needed somebody, because you came here and you told me that you would go to coffee stands. What were you doing at coffee stands?
So right before we started in real estate, we were getting ready. Robert had just quit his job and we were like, okay, well, we're going to start real estate January of 20 full go. Let's order business cards. And on Christmas Eve, our family always had a tradition where we would go and hand out candy canes at a coffee stand and pay for some coffee for people, small scale, like 10 to 20 people. But that first year in 2019, Robert had just quit his job and he goes, let's pay for 200 people's coffee today on Christmas Eve. And I looked at him and I'm like, Robert, we have no money. We're broke. Can we buy me a coffee? Because, oh my gosh. And he kind of Robert's good at this because he's like, this is God's calling. We're doing it. It doesn't matter if it's hard. It doesn't matter. Like, he's very disciplined in that, where he's like, God said to do it. Let's do it. And I will be a little more hesitant on times when it's difficult, like the coffee thing, where he's like, we need to get our name out there. We need to meet people. So let's go bless a coffee stand on Christmas Eve when it's probably not a busy day, and we'll pay for everybody, for the first 200 people, we'll pay for their coffee. So I actually have pictures of my daughter and me and my husband out there on Christmas Eve handing out candy canes with our business cards going, coffee's on us today. And crying because I had no money.
That's faith. That's what faith is.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you don't have the ability to be obedient, even when it's hard, like we can all be obedient when it's easy, right? If God says, hey, go buy one person's coffee today, or, not that he's like telling you to buy people things, but just as an example, if he's telling you to do something that's easy, you're probably going to do it. But if he's telling you to do something hard and you don't do it, you're not being obedient. And then, honestly, what I know now is when the things are hard and you still do them, the blessings are so much bigger. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like tenfold.
That's the journey of faith. That's probably if you were to sum up the journey of what faith does in your life, that's it right there.
Absolutely. I mean, our business would not be where it is right now. We started in real estate and loved on as many people as we could. We were in a room with our brokerage and they all were setting their goals out. And their goals were, I want to sell 10 to 20 houses, or, and that's great. Like that, if that's your goal, that's your goal. But for us, our goal was bigger. We we wanted to do something bigger, because when I have more money in my pocket, I can give that back to God. I can give it back to somebody else. I can give it back to a local business. I'm not trying to be greedy and say, I want the most money that I could possibly get. And when I also have more stability, I'm able to go, okay, I got this. I don't have to focus on where I'm going to get my next client from. I can focus on who I'm going to love on next and where I'm going to get, because I don't have to focus on that. That's already taken care of. And but we wanted our business to grow faster so we would be able to do those things. And so our goal was, well, we want to sell 50 houses. Or I think the first year was 25. And everybody was like, there's no way you'll sell 25 this year. It's your first year. You don't know anybody here. We sold 17 houses that year.
In 6 months, because you didn't sell a house till June, right?
In 6 months. And then the next year, our goal was 50, and we sold 51.
Wow.
And it was like, I know that this isn't for like what everybody wants. Like, a lot of people will say their goals are not to sell as many houses as possible. And that's not our goal. Our goal is to allow us the financial freedom and the freedom to where I don't have to go and seek out a ton of clients all the time and be on this weird roller coaster that is in real estate. I want to be able to focus my time and energy on who I can love on and who I can connect with and all of those things, because that's where my mission is. Real estate's a stronghold for me doing God's work.
It's a vehicle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When we walk as Jesus in the flesh, how many people come to know Jesus in the way they see you living life? And it's not about how many houses you can sell, but what's the actual impact you can make.
Yeah, because when we're gone, nobody's going to care how many houses I sold. They're going to go, who did she impact? What did she do to help people? And how many people did she bring to God?
You probably don't have a number, but like, how many people do you feel that you have been able to bring to God since you've been here?
Oh gosh. I don't know, and I think I could be better. This is where I struggle, because I'm like, I don't think I've done enough. But I don't know. There have been many people who will go to church or who have left their faith and said, I would be willing to try it again, or who will say, hey, can you go to church with me this Sunday or whatnot? So I think there have been a significant amount of people we've impacted. But also, I'm always like, but there could be more.
Our journeys just aren't over yet, and that's okay.
No, and honestly, the coolest parts are like, we'll do community things. And we had one lady, it was our very first year, and I'll never forget it. She had a son who I think he was 14, and he had met me and Robert and was chatting with us and was kind of at a low point in his life, adolescence. I feel like we get there and it feels detrimental at the time. And a couple months after we met him, his mom had texted me and said, I don't know what you guys talked about, but at some point in that conversation, my son felt so moved and driven by you guys that he decided he was going to create his own businesses and start his own journeys on doing stuff. And he was like at this point where he didn't want to do anything. And he shifted and was like, I'm going to create my own business and I'm going to do all of these things because I want to live like they're living. And I thought that was just like the neatest, the best compliment I probably could have ever had.
That's fulfilling. Yeah. There's a big difference in the feeling that you get when you know you've made that kind of an impact on another person's life. And it's because you had the courage to live out life the way you felt you were called to live in your purpose and the ripple effect of that courage.
Yeah, absolutely. People are always talking about a Jesus glow. And I feel like that is kind of the epitome of how we want to be, is just like we have this glow up because we're like on fire for Jesus.
Mm-hmm. So for someone that's listening that is also a Jesus lover and a Jesus follower and wants to create an impact, but also wants to build a business, what advice would you give?
Don't expect things to come back to you, but absolutely give your heart to everybody you can. Build as long-lasting, not relationships that are superficial, but get deep in there and love on these people and their families, not just the person who owns the business that you want to connect with. but love on their whole family and really dive into people, because we can all pretend like we care about somebody. Like, I've had a lot of people ask me, well, how do you build those relationships? And I said, you have to truly care about them. Like, people don't care about you if you're surface level, like, hey, what's up, man? They want to know that you genuinely love them, and your business will grow tenfold every time.
How much do you believe that knowing you're loved by God is what can fuel that?
Oh, 100%. Well, I just don't think you're willing to love on as many people or do it so selflessly without that. Without God being your strong place and going back to Him every single time, I think it's harder for you to be as selfless. Like, we can all be like, oh, I want to give you something, or I want to give you my time, but to not expect anything back is what is really important. Because when you expect it back, people feel that. And it doesn't feel as wholeheartedly loving.
The other side of it is, from what I'm hearing in your story, is that you were not loved in the way that you felt was meaningful by someone that you maybe should have been multiple times, and yet you still felt loved by God. We have these stories about our worth and our worthiness. Are we worthy of being loved? And when we have evidence in the world that says, nope, you're not, we believe I must not be worthy of being loved. And yet God still loves us unconditionally.
Absolutely.
And go ahead.
Well, and I think for me, when in all of those moments where I felt like my life was crumbling, where I was my mom or the guy I was with at the time and what happened there, and all of these things that are happening that hurt, my thing that I always clung to was Romans 8:18, that your current sufferings today do not compare at all to the goodness that is coming. And so I think I had to really focus on that. And that's been the thing that I always go back to is today sucks, right? It's not a good time. And we're hurting, and whatever's happening in my life is whatever's happening. And that sucks. But next week, next month, next year, whatever the next part is when this is over, is so much greater than what's currently happening.
What has been the best advice that you've ever received, whether it's from the church or the Bible or business advice?
Honestly, I think what I just mentioned was that no matter what you're going through, filling yourself around the people that you need to be around. Even if you think you're on the right track and you think you're moving in this right path, if you're not surrounding yourself with the people who want to get better, maybe they're not the best, right? Like, maybe they're not full into Jesus, maybe they're not making all of the right decisions, but they want to, then that's okay. Like, it's good to fill yourself around the people who are already there and the people who are in the process, because we're not all perfect. But if you're working toward the same thing, you're getting there. If you're surrounding yourself with people who don't care about what their purpose is, don't care about where they're going, have no goals, but whatever, that's where you start to fail, because you're filling yourself around people who just don't care.
Or just focus on earthly things that really don't bring true fulfillment and true peace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, materials or whatnot.
There's a lot of people that do know you. You guys are hilarious. I was telling you off camera, I think your reels are so funny. I'm entertained by them. But so I want to say you probably already have this audience of people that maybe thinks they know you, but what is something that you wish people knew better about you two, you and Robert?
I think it's fun to do those fun videos that we post I mean, that's just like a different way of marketing. We do a lot of fun videos to help get more leads to the houses that we're listing and things like that. But I think I genuinely just want people to know that my heart, where our hearts are, is to not, like, I don't need as many clients, but I love the option to be there for people when they need something like that. But my heart really is in loving on all of the people that I come in contact with. I think that's genuinely what I want to be known for, and to be known for people that I like to connect with. I want to make an impact in Spokane more than just She sold our house.
How did you and Danny meet? So, for the listeners that are wondering what I'm talking about, Danny owns the Bohemian. She was a previous episode. If you didn't listen, go back and listen. Her story is amazing. You guys are almost like best friends. Are you best friends?
Yeah, we are. But we've only been best friends for 2 years.
And when you met, you were serving her business?
Yeah, so I will find a lot of the businesses that I choose to love on Instagram just because I'm, there. And so I was looking around and I saw Danny and her family, and a lot of the things that she was posting was so similar to like how Robert and I live our lives. We had 2 kids, they had 2 kids about the same age. We love God, we're outdoorsy. Like there was a lot of similarities, and I was like, gosh, like, let's just go in there. Her store is so cute. I cast it all the time. We'll go into the Bohemian and we'll just sit down and meet with them. And we met with Danny and Riley at their table in the boho, and we just had like a good conversation. And funny enough, like our very first time actually hanging out, we decided we were going to go camping together in the middle of nowhere for a weekend when we don't know each other, which could have been terrible. And it was wonderful, and we just never stopped hanging out. We've been best friends ever since, and I talk to her every single day, and we do business right alongside of each other now.
Yeah, no, you go in when they're doing different events, and I don't know all the things that you've done as far as how you've shown up. I know you show up and have hot chocolate, right? Or different things to support. I just love how much you support the growth of other businesses.
Yeah, we'll do a lot of things where we either do promotions for people's business, or we'll host a community event at people's businesses, whether that's like a meet, like a hangout, just whatever, or we've done painting bags for foster kids before. It just allows you to get to know each other, get to meet people around you, but also serve a bigger purpose. Every year in December, we do a Grinch event at Trailbreaker Cider. And on accident, that got really big. And our very first year, we had 800 people show up.
Oh my gosh.
And then last year, we had over 1,000. So,
what all happens at that event? What am I missing out on?
yeah, no, well, the first year Robert was the Grinch, and you got free photos with him. So we hire a photographer to come, and you get free photos with the Grinch. And then we have other vendors like hair tinsel and permanent jewelry and face painting and like fun things for the kids to do. But there's also like promotions for drinks and stuff there. And so it's gotten a lot bigger in the last year, but it's just really fun to meet people and see people from years past where they're like so excited to come, and like the kids dress up and bring onions, and it's like the cutest thing possible. But yeah, so we get to do that. And it's
that sounds like a blast. Well, what would you say to the woman that's listening that maybe she's not a realtor, or maybe she doesn't want to be a realtor, but she wants to have more meaning and more fulfillment, and maybe she hasn't done, you're doing so many things in the community. What is maybe one thing that she could start doing that would be that ripple effect that you started when you first came here and you first started living this way?
I think the biggest impact you can have is there are so many women out there craving friendship. I mean, you see it in every Facebook group where there's a mom who she just moved here and she doesn't know anybody, or she's been here her whole life, but it just doesn't feel like she's connected. And I think the biggest impact you can have is by connecting with those people. Maybe you take an hour out of your day and go have a picnic, or go on a walk, or go get a coffee, and just spend time with one of those women who need a little bit more connection.
That's so beautiful. Where can people find you?
Well, we're on Instagram. We're on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, but we're all over. You probably see our banners at coffee shops, and and our truck is wrapped.
What's your Instagram handle?
realestateduo.pnw.
I love how you guys are doing so much of it together. It's so fun to see. Like I said, your reels are entertaining, but it's also fun because what it looks like, I'm sure, and what it actually is that you guys are loving life together.
Yeah, we've come a long way. That there was a lot of learning curves in working with your spouse that people don't see, but we've grown into our roles, and now we get to like just fully embrace what we've built, and our kids get to do it too, and so it's just a lot of fun to do it as a whole family.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your heart and your story, and just thank you for being an amazing Jesus follower, Jesus in the flesh person for the community of Spokane Valley and Idaho and all of the surrounding areas.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, have a good day.
Thank you, you too.
Who in your world needs a safe place to land? And could that place be you? Nicole's story reminds us that building a business and living a purpose-driven life isn't about flashy success. It's about showing up with open hands and an open heart. If this conversation moved you, take a moment to reach out to someone today. Be the friend, the light, the safe place that you maybe once needed. And if you loved this episode, share it with someone who's ready to live on purpose too. Until next time, keep rising boldly and loving deeply.